break out of my own haze and start fighting for my boys. It was a difficult time that in some ways I will never forget, and in some ways I have no way of remembering. But I knew at that moment it was time to fight for my family. My children at the time were 4, 6, and 8, and experienced a lot of things in the hours after the bombs. And when we came back, I knew I had to find a way for them to be an active participant in their healing. So we decided to have a bake sale. We had a bake sale to raise money for One Fund Boston. And I thought this would just be a simple way for them to feel they were taking some action. I felt helpless as a parent. I felt helpless as a person, and we needed to take action. So we baked and baked and baked, and one cupcake and $1 at a time, we raised $1,300 for the One Fund Boston. And what was most important to me that day was that for the first time, my kids were running around the park. They were playing. They were talking about their experience, and they weren't clinging to my side. That was their first step towards renewal. That was their first step in healing. And while we made a lot of money, and everybody I knew came out to support us, when we were finished, we had more baked goods than we started with because everybody also came with baked goods. So in the days that had followed when we first returned to Miami, every time my boys heard a siren or saw a police officer, and admittedly, I had the same reaction, there was a fear. My heart would start to pound. I would see them shake. So I decided that we had all these extra baked goods, and the first thing that we should do is take them to the police and fire stations and let my boys talk to the policemen and the firemen and let them see that policemen and firemen were not something to be feared, that they were there to protect us. So we went to the fire station, and one of my sons had been having a hard time. He was the only one who hadn't spoken at all about the events, and he wasn't sleeping, and it was understandably a rough time. We walked into the fire station, and a fireman walked over, and he bent down, and he said, "Wow, why are you bringing me cupcakes?" And all of a sudden, it was just a flood of words, and he opened, and he started talking. And the fireman went in the back and brought him a hat, and he gave him the hat, and my son slept for the first time that night wearing that hat. And as I think about Rosh Hashanah and reflecting on the past year, one of the most important things are just kind words from strangers, and something that, while my family and I saw the worst of humanity, we also saw the best on that day in Boston and in the weeks that followed. I realized then, with all of the kind words, I had an obligation not only to myself and to my family, but to all of those people who reached out to us. People who knew us well, people who had met us once, many people who never had, and just reached out with a kind word. And I needed all of them some way. I needed to show all of them that their words made a difference to us, that they helped us. In those first few weeks, I was so concentrated on my boys, and my husband and I really focused all of our energy on them. I didn't realize that I was just getting through the day. I was not able to go to a mall. I was not able to be in large crowds. My friends took me to a concert one night, and I had to leave. I had a panic attack and started shooting off pyrotechnics, and I couldn't be there. But perhaps my breaking point was when I was out running, doing what I enjoy, doing what I need every day for my renewal, and a car backfired, and I had a panic attack. And that car backfiring was my first step towards renewal. I realized then and there that I had to go back to Boston. I had to go for all the people who reached out to my family. I had to go for my boys, and I had to go for me. It was a way for me to show the world that America was still the land of the free. I stood there that day on the corner, huddled up on the curb with my teammates crowded around me, trying to catch my breath. And I kept thinking to myself, how can this be in America? What can I do? And the answer was, I can go back. I can let them see that America will remain free. I can show my boys that I am not going to live in fear, and I won't let them live in fear. So as April approached, my husband and I made the decision that while it was very important for me to go back to Boston, it was still a little too early for my kids to return. and the anxiety of waiting at the finish line might be a little bit too much. So I returned to Boston alone. I had to go for my entire family. The trip to Boston was emotional, to say the least. I cried the entire flight there. And the night before the race, I lay in my hotel room and I watched a documentary about a man who had lost his legs during the bombings the year before. He wasn't a runner, he was simply your average American watching the race with friends. The Boston Athletic Association had offered him a coveted entry into the race as an incentive to recover, and he accepted. The next morning, as I made my way to the race site, I just began having conversations with strangers, people I never knew but was forever bonded to. And we all spoke about our experiences, we all cried, we all had this sense of reflection and renewal that Rosh Hashanah is about. And we came together and we helped each other. And we had never met, but we forever changed each other's lives. Just like so many of the kind words that came from so many people actually sitting in this room in those weeks after to my family, how they really lifted us and brought us the peace that we were searching for. I entered my race corral and I was getting ready to start the race, and they were reading the names of the victims. And I started to cry. And there was a very young runner next to me, and she looked at me and she said, "Were you here last year?" And I said yes, and she said, "Me too." Complete strangers, we grabbed each other's hand and we held on tight to each other as they played the national anthem. And the moment the gun went off, we gave each other one last squeeze and ran away. Someone I'll never forget, someone whose name I'll never know. But we were in it together. As I started running, I never felt a stronger sense of fear, vulnerability, but at the same time, all the love and protection. I knew that everybody was there supporting me, and I knew that together we would make it through. There was 26.2 miles of signs that held symbols of freedom. Foreigners waving American flags, signs that read, "You're running for America, thank you for running for my freedom." And as I approached mile 20 and started that last long uphill and my legs began to feel the distance, I saw that man that I had watched in the documentary the night before. He started the race hours before all the other runners, and he was plugging away on his new prosthetic legs, one step at a time. And I just started bawling. I was crying, and our eyes met, and he looked me right in the eye and he said, "We're Boston strong, keep running." And I did. And as I approached the finish line, I looked down, and embedded into the ground on the cement were the words that read, "This is our finish line." And as I crossed that finish line, for me, for my boys, and for something so much bigger than all of us, I looked up and I saw a 100-foot banner that said, "Boston Stronger." And I cried a lot of tears in the last 18 months, but perhaps none more so than at that moment. I knew that I was giving my boys a renewed sense of security, to let them know that no matter what happens in life, you keep fighting, to let them know that I will do everything I can to show them the world is safe and to help them feel security, and to let the world know that we will not be kept down. Crossing that finish line didn't necessarily end our road to recovery, but it gave us that renewal of mind, of body, of spirit, and that reflection on the last year that I hope that this holiday brings to all of you. And I thank all of you for listening and for actually being another step in our road to recovery. Shana Tova.